Welcome back to English Class Collective. I'm Alex.
And I'm Lucas. We're so happy to have you with us today.
Today, we're talking about something really exciting, how learning English can completely change your life. And trust me, we've seen this happen with so many of our students.
That's right, Alex. You know, it's amazing to think about all the doors that open up when you start learning English. Whether it's for work, travel, or just making new friends, English really can transform your life.
In today's episode, we're going to share some real stories and practical examples of how English learning has helped people achieve their dreams. We'll also give you some useful vocabulary and expressions along the way.
And don't worry, we'll keep everything simple and clear. If you're at an intermediate level, you'll be able to follow along perfectly. We'll explain any new words we use. We'll also include a vocabulary list in the description.
Here's what you can expect today. First, we'll talk about some general ways that English can improve your life. Then, we'll share some personal stories. Both Lucas and I have some interesting experiences to share.
We'll also have 2 vocabulary review sections where we'll practice some useful words and phrases. And don't forget, we'll have some quick comprehension checks to make sure you're following along.
That's right. And remember, if you need to, you can always pause the podcast to take notes or practice the new words we introduce.
We're really excited about today's topic because we know just how life-changing language learning can be. Are you ready to get started, Alex?
Absolutely. Let's dive right in and explore how English can open new doors in your life. So, Lucas, let's start with one of the biggest benefits of learning English: career opportunities. I mean, these days, so many companies are looking for people who can speak English well.
Absolutely. You know, I was just reading that people who speak English can earn up to 30% more than those who don't. That's a huge difference in someone's life.
And it's not just about the money. When you speak English, you can apply for jobs anywhere in the world. You can work remotely for international companies, attend global conferences.
That's right. And here's a practical tip for our listeners. Try changing your phone's language to English. It's a simple way to practice every day.
Oh, that's a great suggestion. And speaking of daily practice, watching English movies with subtitles is another effective strategy. Start with English subtitles if you need them, then gradually switch to English audio only.
You know what else really helps? Finding a study buddy or joining an English conversation group. Having someone to practice with makes learning so much more fun and effective.
Yes, and it helps with motivation too. Sometimes learning a language can feel difficult, but when you have friends to practice with, it becomes more like a fun activity than studying.
That reminds me, motivation is really key here. I always tell our students to set small, achievable goals. Maybe start with learning 5 new words each week, or spending 15 minutes daily on English practice.
Exactly. Small steps lead to big progress. Another tip I love is keeping a diary in English. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just write a few sentences about your day.
And don't forget about the internet. There are so many free resources online. You can find English learning apps, YouTube channels, podcasts like ours.
Speaking of which, one thing that really helps is finding content about topics you already love. If you're interested in cooking, watch cooking videos in English. If you love sports, follow English-speaking athletes on social media.
That's such good advice. When you combine learning English with something you're passionate about, it doesn't even feel like studying anymore.
All right, let's review some of the useful words and expressions we just discussed. First, let's talk about the phrase career opportunities. These are chances for jobs or advancement in your work. For example, learning English creates many career opportunities.
Next, we have remotely, which means working from a different location, usually from home, as in, many people now work remotely for companies in other countries.
We also mentioned study buddy. This is an informal term for someone you study with regularly. Here's how to use it. Having a study buddy helps you stay motivated while learning English.
Another important phrase we used was achievable goals. These are targets that you can realistically reach. For example, setting achievable goals helps you make steady progress in English.
We also talked about keeping a diary, which means writing down your thoughts and experiences regularly. Like this. Keeping a diary in English helps you practice writing every day.
And finally, passionate about, which means having strong feelings or excitement for something. As in, when you're passionate about a topic, learning English becomes easier.
These words and phrases are really useful for talking about learning and self-improvement. Try using them in your own conversations. Now, let's check how well you understood our first conversation. We'll ask you 2 questions and then give you the answers. Remember to pause the podcast if you need more time to think.
Here's question number 1. What are 2 benefits of learning English that we mentioned in our discussion?
Pause the podcast now if you'd like to think about your answer.
Okay, here's the answer. We talked about better career opportunities and the ability to work remotely for international companies.
And here's question number 2. What was one of the study tips we suggested for making steady progress?
Take a moment to think about it. Pause if you need to.
The answer is, we suggested finding a study buddy and setting achievable goals to help stay motivated.
How did you do? Don't worry if you didn't get all the answers. You can always go back and listen again.
You know, Lucas, when I think about my own journey with language learning, I can't help but smile. Before I started teaching English, I actually learned Spanish as a second language.
Really? I didn't know that, Alex. What motivated you to learn Spanish?
Well, I fell in love with Spanish music first. I remember listening to songs and wanting to understand the lyrics so badly. It really opened my eyes to how learning a language can connect you to a whole new world of culture.
That's fascinating. I had a similar experience, but with English movies. I started watching them with subtitles in my native language, then switched to English subtitles, and finally tried watching without any subtitles at all.
Did you find that helpful? I know many of our listeners struggle with understanding native speakers at first.
Absolutely. It was challenging at first, but it really improved my listening skills. I remember the first time I understood a joke in English without needing translation. It felt like such a breakthrough moment.
Those breakthrough moments are so important, aren't they? I had one when I was traveling in Mexico. I managed to have a full conversation with a taxi driver about local politics. It wasn't perfect, but I felt so accomplished.
That reminds me of my first job interview in English. I was so nervous, but all those hours of practice paid off. I got the job, and it completely changed my career path.
That's incredible, and it's such a great example of how language learning can open doors. Have you noticed how your thinking changes when you become fluent in another language?
Definitely. I actually think differently when I'm speaking English compared to my native language. It's like having access to a whole new perspective on things.
I've experienced that too. And you know what else I've noticed? The friends I've made through language learning have become some of my closest relationships. There's something special about connecting with people across cultural boundaries.
I couldn't agree more. Just last week, I was video chatting with friends from 3 different countries, all in English. It's amazing how language can bring people together like that.
Let's review some of the useful expressions we just used in our conversation. The first one is opened my eyes to, as in, learning Spanish opened my eyes to a new culture.
Right. When something opens your eyes to something else, it helps you understand or realize something new.
Next, we have breakthrough moment. This is when you suddenly achieve something important or make significant progress.
Like when I said, understanding a joke in English was a breakthrough moment.
Another useful phrase we used is paid off. For example, all those hours of practice paid off. This means your hard work led to good results.
We also used opened doors, which means creating new opportunities, like when we said language learning can open doors.
And finally, let's look at across cultural boundaries. This phrase means connecting with people from different cultures.
As I mentioned, connecting with people across cultural boundaries is one of the best parts of learning a new language.
These expressions are really useful for talking about learning and personal growth. Try using them in your own conversations. Now, let's check your understanding of our discussion about personal experiences with language learning. Here's question number 1. What was the breakthrough moment that Lucas mentioned in his language learning journey?
Take a moment to think about it and pause the audio if you need more time. The answer is understanding an English joke for the first time.
And here's question number 2. Name one of the main benefits of learning English that we discussed in our personal stories.
Need time to think? Go ahead and pause. The answer is being able to connect with people across cultural boundaries or opening doors to new opportunities. Either of these answers is correct.
How did you do? Remember, you can always go back and listen to our discussion again if you missed anything. Well, we've covered so much ground today about how learning English can truly transform your life.
That's right, Alex. We've talked about both the practical benefits, like career opportunities, and the personal rewards, like making friends from different cultures.
And remember, everyone's journey is different. The key is to stay consistent and not get discouraged when things get challenging.
Exactly. Whether you're just starting out or already on your way to fluency, every step forward is progress worth celebrating.
Before we go, we'd love to hear from you. Share your own English learning experiences in the comments below. What changes has learning English brought to your life?
And don't forget to subscribe to English Class Collective for more helpful tips and conversations about learning English. See you in our next episode.
Keep practicing, keep learning, and most importantly, keep believing in yourself. Bye, everyone.
Goodbye.